Hi, welcome to or welcome back to my channel. This is my May wrap up. So I have some of the books that I read here that I have physical copies of. And actually a couple of these were in a video from earlier this month, so I'll put the card up when we get to those. May was a pretty successful reading month. I read 12 books, which it didn't feel like I read that many, if I'm being quite honest. It didn't feel like I had made it that far, but apparently I did. The first book I read was Family of Liars by E. Lockhart. This is the prequel to We Were Liars, and it's from the perspective of one of the mothers. And it's kind of a similar story as We Were Liars, but one of the, well, I feel like I'm gonna spoil it if I give, it's a story of a summer of one of the parents of one of the children in We Were Liars, and that's really all I can say. He asks her to tell him the worst thing she's ever done. She tells the story of that summer. It was a good time. Is it a quality book? No. Was I having a quality time? Absolutely. So if you're into that kind of thing, definitely go that way. Next up was Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. I gave this 4 stars for the reading experience. Excuse you, ma'am. Ma'am. Could you chew that another time? Alrighty, so Alice Feeney's Rock, Paper, Scissors was one of the first few books that I read in May. I gave this one 4 stars, but that was more so because I was enjoying's the wrong word. I wanted to know what happened next. I was a little annoyed by the main characters. So you're following Mr. and Mrs. Wright, LOL, to a weekend getaway. I think Amelia is the one that plans it. She says she gets an email saying she won a thing. She goes with her husband to what they think is going to be an Airbnb type situation, but it's actually like an abandoned church or something. And you get both of their perspectives back and forth, and it's like letters from the wife at like through parts of their marriage, you know, on their anniversaries. And she's talking about like getting him the gift that corresponds. Like I think your first year is supposed to be paper, and then like the next year like tin or something. And so she kind of goes through all those things, and she says every anniversary the couple exchanges traditional gifts: paper, cotton, pottery, tin, and each year Adam's wife writes him a letter that she never lets him read until now. They both know the weekend will make or break their marriage, but they didn't randomly win this trip. One of them is lying, and someone doesn't want them to live happily ever after. 10 years of marriage, 10 years of secrets, and an anniversary they will never forget. It was a quality domestic thriller. The plot twist was kind of meh. The husband has like a facial recognition issue, so like he doesn't actually know what his wife looks like, or maybe he does, but then he forgets. It felt a little flimsy. I'm not saying that the disability isn't real. I believe that is a real condition. It was just the way it was used in the story felt flimsy. But it created some chaos, and I enjoyed the chaos. So that was a 4-star read. In experience and actual quality of book, it's more like a 2, 2.5. The next 3 books, I'm just gonna kind of peruse over lightly. I'll put a card up here at the top because I did a whole reading vlog over them. It was I Found You, Blood Will Tell, and The Overnight Guest. I gave I Found You. I gave 3 stars. Honestly, I can't even really remember what it's about. I think there was a man on a beach that was like randomly sitting there, and this woman takes him in and is trying to figure out who he is and where he came from because he doesn't know. Yeah, that's exactly what it's about. And then Blood Will Tell, I gave 3 stars. There wasn't really anything in particularly wrong with this book. I go into it a little bit more detail in the vlog. I just didn't like some of the storylines. Just felt they just weren't the tropes that I enjoy in thrillers. There weren't anything wrong with them. This just wasn't for me. The one that surprised me the most was The Overnight Guest by Heather Gudenkauf. I really enjoyed that book. I gave it 4 stars. It's reminiscent to me of No Exit, but not as like horror, if you could call it horror. I don't even know if that's truly horror, but that horrified me. The thing about The Overnight Guest is that like the hits just kept coming, It felt very intense because it's kind of got that trapped room feel. There's a snowstorm, there's a child involved, dangerous men, all those kinds of things. Incredible. It was an incredible book. I really enjoyed it. Then I hit a skid of just wonderful back-to-back books. The first up is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Malinda Lo. This is a queer story set in the 1940s? 50s. Mid-50s, 1950s. This is like in the midst of the Red Scare and like communism, but then also there's a scare around both Japanese and Chinese immigrants, especially because the Japanese internment camps I think had just ended, and now people are looking at China, and people who have immigrated from China. Some of these people had like lived in America their whole lives, were born here, you know, like first generation kids, but they're still feeling a ton of hate because America. So, but the story is of this girl, Lily, and she is kind of dealing with the remnants of those kinds of things. Her parents are like, oh, you can't hang out with these people because the government thinks they're communists, and they're trying to find any reason to deport anyone or take our green cards, things like that. So she's dealing with that, home expectations, because again, she's a child of immigrants. And then she meets this girl who is very clearly a lesbian, but neither of them are out because it's the 1950s and safety is... it's kind of there, but not really. And so it's a story of the two of them falling in love and being absolutely fascinated by this lesbian bar called the Telegraph Club that's right outside of Chinatown in San Francisco. This story was immaculate. It was immaculate. This is very much a... there's some plot, but it's definitely way more character driven. And I absolutely just love the way the author developed both Lily and Kath. But specifically, like, Lily goes through just hit after hit after hit. And not like, some of it was traumatic, some of it wasn't, but just the way she handled her story and her feelings, I thought was brilliant. So, can't recommend that enough. And then after that, I went to nonfiction and I read Between Two Kingdoms, a memoir of a life interrupted by Suleika Jaouad. My goodness. This book's about cancer. I mean, it's not actually about cancer, but cancer is very prevalent in it. I mean, I guess it is kind of about cancer. It's her journey. She finds out she has leukemia. She's with a boyfriend that she's only been with, I want to say, for like 2 months. She's studying abroad. She has to come home, deal with all this shit. He moves with her, is there with her and her parents, like trying to figure out what's going on. And it's just her life going through treatment, trying to find a new identity of who she is, figuring out all of these things, and then also, you know, just having to have the will to survive and go through chemo. And just so much more than that. She, at one point in her journey, her doctor's like, you have to find something that has nothing to do with cancer so that you mentally can be somewhere else sometimes. Like, you're not going to survive this if your brain can't find some joy somewhere. And writing had always been a thing for her. So she decides that she's going to blog her whole experience. And it was incredible. Absolutely incredible. I actually just found out that her cancer came back in December. Someone tagged her on Instagram or something for like a review of the book. And so I went to her page. And so that was really sad. And I also, for some reason, didn't make the connection that the John she's talking about in the latter half of the book is Jon Batiste, who I absolutely love his music. And so, yeah, apparently they've been together for like a long time, I guess now, since this book came out, prior to the book coming out, because he's in the book. But I'm not doing a great job of talking about this. This book is incredible. It is harrowing, though. Like, if you are not in a place to hear the just mental and physical aspects and trauma and dignity stripping parts of cancer, chemotherapy, and just trying to survive, I would still recommend this be on your TBR at some point, but not right now. Not right now, if that's not something that you can handle. It's just such a real depiction. She also talks a lot about like just the privileges that she has. One of her family friends, I think, was a doctor at a cancer center or something, or knew of the cancer center that she needed to go to, and like helps her do that. And like they like live with them in Manhattan at some point so that her parents don't have to try to like buy an apartment and like do a thing. And she talks a lot about that, but she just gets very real about her experiences. She even at some point like meets a death row inmate via like her vlog, and actually like goes to meet him. And so that was a really cool thing to see. It's just her life. It's her life, and it's beautiful, and it's heartbreaking, and it's wonderful. Like a 5-star read, obviously. And I know that's weird because it's a nonfiction, it's her life, but I just mean like the way she invited us to her story in this book was just beautiful, and I loved every aspect of it. And I wish her well. I hope that her, you know, whatever this round of treatments and things looks like for her is, I know it's not going to be easy because it's cancer, and cancer's never easy, but I just hope it's easier than the last one, and that she's in remission again soon because she deserves it. So, on a slightly happier note, I guess, and that's really hard. I should have ended with that one. Maybe started with it. I don't know. That was hard. Lease on Love by Fallon Ballard, I read next. I had seen so many like 5-star reviews, people raving about how they read this in like one sitting, and I did read this all in one day, but it was very much a 3-star book for me. I wanted to love it so much, mostly because it's heralded as beach read meets the flat share. I love the flat share. Flat share is a 5-star read for me. Beach read I DNF'd, and I'm actually currently trying to reread it to see if I can revive my feelings around it. And maybe that's where I lost, because it just didn't hit for me. It's about this woman who gets fired from her job after losing her mind on her boss because he decides to pull the nepotism card, and instead of giving her the promotion she's been working oh so hard for, he gives it to his soon-to-be son-in-law who's like fresh out of college or whatever. And she, honestly, that scene was pretty good. She went on a tear. And I honestly am not mad at her. She literally looks at her boss and goes, so this guy's qualifications for this job is the fact that he's currently fucking your daughter? Is that what you're telling me? And honestly, I clapped. I clapped. I was very excited by that. That is where the excitement stops in this book. It just right there after like chapter 2. She's out drinking with her friends. She decides she's gonna go into this dating apps and like, you know, find a one-night, two-night stand or whatever. But instead of opening the dating app, opens a roommate app, a roommate finder app. And so she meets this guy, Jack, who is stupid rich, owns a whole ass brownstone, I think in Brooklyn, and is offering her stupid cheap rent to live there. He's going through his own hard time, and because he's super rich, obviously doesn't really need the money, but he doesn't want to live alone anymore. They meet for coffee basically, and he's like, hey, she's acting like it's a date. She doesn't realize that she was on the roommate app, and he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? This is for an apartment, like what? And they kind of go back and forth, and so she, you know, decides to take the apartment he's offering, or bottom floor or whatever, and they go through a bunch of shit and they fall in love. It was fine. It was not well developed. I think this would be a fine read if you're like hopping on a plane or sitting by the pool or something, but it just wasn't great. There are better romances out there. Next up I read The Change by Kirsten Miller. I gave this 4 stars because it was a 5-star reading experience until the last 20%, and I'm a little mad at myself for it taking me so long to realize that the storyline of this takes the shape of a real life criminal storyline that is very well known. And I'm kind of tired of books doing that. I know we're going to get that because everyone decides that they need to be Law and Order, and that when there's a massive true crime situation, like that's what their plot of their thrillers are going to be. I was way more interested in where the story was going in the beginning, and let me tell you a little bit about it. So it's this oceanfront community called of Montauk, or Mattock, because it's not Montauk, because there's no N. It's in Long Island, whatever. So there are these 3 women who are basically about to go through menopause, i.e. the change, or some of them have, but they've discovered these magical elements of themselves. One of the women has a great ability with plants, both of the poisonous and non-poisonous variety. One of the women, when she gets like hot flashes and angry, she could literally like burn your skin off. And the other one can see dead people. Their storylines, like figuring that out and their backstories was incredible. Incredible. And then obviously the woman who sees dead people is how we get to the rest of the true crime storyline, because this girl is calling out to her. They go, she finds where her body is, and then the police obviously start investigating. But there are other bodies there too, and there are other ghosts like standing in the water waiting for her, and she's like, wait, what the fuck? Like, what's happening here? And it just unravels into this whole thing. Yeah, definitely a 4-star read. Quick spoiler, I'll put a big thing on the screen here and give you a couple seconds here to, you know, scrub forward. The spoiler is that this is basically written off of the Jeffrey Epstein and, why can't I think of the woman's name? Whatever her name was, something Lynn. Why do I want to say Elin, but it's not Elin. Ghislaine Maxwell. Those are basically the villains of this story. It's very much like that kind of story, and she's helping bring girls to the island and terrible things are happening to them. I honestly just didn't want to read about that, and I kind of wish I had known before I got into it. If that's something that you don't want to read about, skip this book. Or you know what, read the first 75% and then just stop, because it was great prior to that. And the next thing I went on a little romance tear, I started the Boyfriend Project series by Farrah Rashan, because somehow I ended up with the NetGalley copy for the 3rd book. I don't know how. Maybe they sent me like one of the email cards or something, I don't know. Anyway, I looked at it, I was like, oh, I have this. And then I realized it was book 3 and not book 1, and I was like, oh shit, I should read the other 2. So I did. The first one was okay. I gave it 3 stars. It's one of those books where it's like, it's strong enough for a series for you to want to keep going, but like, it's clearly like the weakest of the series. And I know that sounds like a dig, but to me, like, that's a sign of a great author. And what I mean by that is, if you get stronger as your books go on, like your writing's only getting better and better, and I absolutely love to see that. So I'm excited to keep going with whatever Farrah Rashan comes out with next, after this 3rd book, because she definitely got stronger as it went on. The first one is about this woman named Samaya Brooks. The story opens with her sitting in her apartment. She's getting ready, talking to her sister, and her sister is like glued to Twitter, and she's like, what the fuck is going on? And her sister's, oh yeah, like this woman is live tweeting about this man, and he like rented a Lexus, but he's like showing it off as his own, but she knows it's rented because she had the same one from the rental company, and there was like a cigarette burn or something in it, so she like obviously knew it was not his. And he's going on and on or whatever about himself at the date, and she's talking about some sushi roll, and Samaya looked at her sister and goes, does she say she's like doing this or that? And I forget the guy's name. I think it was like Craig or something. She's like, oh, the guy's name was Craig. And he's like, yeah. She's like, I'm supposed to be meeting him. So Samaya goes down to the restaurant and kind of makes a scene. And then these other girls who he also was dating come down. And like it's a whole thing, and they go viral or whatever. And then the 3 of them become friends and kind of move on with their lives. And so the story follows Samaya, who's at work, and she's like a badass coder. And so she's like, you know, living her boss bitch life, and then this new guy shows up at her job, and he's the only one who's being like, not only kind to her, but not really like aggressively probing about the viral video situation. Like, he brings it up, but only in the context of like, hey, I hope you're okay. Like, that's got to be tough to like have your whole life on display like that, and then that's all people care about you. Like, how are you holding up? And like, he's being super kind to her. And so she kind of keeps him at arm's length in a little bit, because she's like, I'm not gonna date a dude at work, like that's weird or whatever. And he is actually there on like a secret assignment of sorts, and so he's trying to keep himself distance. And then shit happens and they fall in love, because this is a romance. I loved the concept of the book. I just didn't love the execution at times, and it just felt like some of it drone on. The conflict, I will say, was very realistic. Y'all know by now I love realistic conflict in romances. I hate when you get to that 3rd act conflict and it's just dumb shit. To me, this one was not dumb shit. It was pretty good. And then the next book, The Dating Playbook, which is the second one, follows another girl out of the trio. So all 3 books follow the 3 friends. The second girl of the trio is Taylor, who is a trainer, and she gets recruited to train an former NFL guy who's trying to make his way back into the league. I don't say I don't like sports romances, because like I've read and loved like everything Chloe Liese has put out for the Bergman brothers, and like that's kind of sports centric. But this one was very like direct, and it makes me think of what was those books? It's like Fumble and like that series. Like I've kind of stayed away from that because I'm like, I don't really want to read a book centered around like football. But I really enjoyed this, which makes me think I might enjoy that. I'm gonna have to take a look. But just the way it went about it was very people first, which sounds dumb because I'm like, it's a romance, but it's a sports romance, so it's, you know, chance for it to be more about football than anything else, but it wasn't. Biggest surprise of the month, Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. This giant chonker down here. Yeah. If you haven't read that, read it. I don't care if you're not a romance girly, a fantasy girly. If you don't think you're a Brando Sando girly, let me tell you right now, you are. You are. Read that book. It's so, so, so good. I thought I was going to be thoroughly confused. I thought I wasn't going to know what was going on, because when I read fantasies, I normally read ones that have more of like light magical systems, but are still very much set in, you know, an urban, like, our world situation. Think Darker Shade of Magic series by V.E. Schwab, stuff like that, where it's like light, you know, baby fantasy. I can do that. I was like, ooh, Brandon Sanderson. Homie's a cornerstone of fantasy. What am I supposed to do with that? That's not for me. Well, let me tell you, Erin from Booked and Busy told me it was for me, and she was right. She was right. You can trust Erin's opinion. She was right. Especially because it's a standalone. In theory, I've seen some things on Goodreads where it like says like there's a second one coming, but like who knows, because Brandon Sanderson's always writing like 15 different things. But it felt like it kind of wrapped up in a way where you're like, this could go on, or this could be the only thing, and I really enjoyed that. It's a story of 2 sisters who are princesses, and their father is supposed to send one of them off to be married to the God King, and basically to bear one of his children and then go on about their lives. One of them has been trained for this literally from birth, the other one has not, and the one who has not is the one that's sent. The area that they live in is like a cast off of the main city, and they're like on the brink of war, and he's like, I have to send one of my daughters to this God King, help prevent us from going to war, and everything will be fine. Everything was not fine. Reader, everything was not fine. But that is where we zip off into the sunset with this badass story. This was such a great story of strength and resilience from both sisters. They both get involved at some point. There are also like a gang of assassins that are in and out of the story. You don't really know who to trust. You think you do, you're wrong. This book's a behemoth, don't get me wrong. It's massive, but it is worth it. There are audiobooks. It is also available for free on Brandon's website because, I don't know, he's unmatched. I now want to read everything he's ever written. The man could write shitty poetry on a napkin and I would read it. It was so good. It was so good. That was the last thing I read in May because it took me 3.5 days and I couldn't do anything else. I want to know what you guys read. Did you read anything that surprised you? Like Warbreaker surprised me. I never thought that would be my thing, but here we are, loving fantasy now. Was there anything that you were so looking forward to but like disappointed you? Tell me more about that in the comments below, and if you made it this far, leave a sword emoji for Warbreaker. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in another video soon. Goodbye.